Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Anyway, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is Rasco of Rasco's Modern Life, Ben of Mr. Cool 210, and Connor Nielsen, the Connoriest, Nielsenist one there is.
Well, I mean, I'd argue John Connor is more Connor than this Connor is. Just a smidge.
Just a smidge, just a skosh.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have a beard to be a good Connor. Our Connor can't pull that off very well.
I would love to see Connor with a beard. I think Connor would look dashing with a beard.
I tried. It was all right, but it was too itchy.
Well,
Connor
depends.
looks like Dean Cain.
Okay. Anyway, tonight we're discussing a topic I came up with off the top of my head last week, and that is, when are we going to use this shit we learned in school? So, this is just like a thing you hear, students say all the time, and there is like a very real context to it. So I thought it might be an interesting thing to discuss. We like to talk about social issues here on Geeky Gentlemen, even though people tell us that we don't know what we're talking about. That's cool. That's cool. You are welcome to be wrong about that.
We're geeky doesn't mean we're smart.
Exactly. So I think the best way to start round robin is talk about what level of education you have. Whether you're still working on your education, you finished your education, what's going on. So I'll start. I am a college graduate. I think I am the most highly educated person in this call. If Steve were here, that would be different.
Look at Mr. Smarty Pants over here. With fancy degree and all that. Woo.
Yeah. I have a college degree in general studies with a minor in philosophy. So I've been around the education system for, longer than I feel I needed to be.
A philosophy major, you say? We got a badass over here. Whew.
Philosophy
Fan
minor.
the flames.
Yeah.
Oh, a minor. I'm a high school graduate. I'm not what to talk.
Yeah. How about you, Connor?
I am like 2 terms away from getting my associate's degree finally.
Okay.
From a community college, no less.
Ooh. Yeah. How about you, Rasco?
I have a PhD in sexy, but no, no, I'm a high school graduate. I just graduated high school maybe it's like a year ago now. So not just, but yeah, I graduated high school a year ago, and I'm probably never going to go to college. I don't think I'm ever going to.
I did go to college for about 6 months, if that means anything.
No, no, it doesn't.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Okay, so we have a fair range of experiences here. We have high school graduates, we have high school graduate with some college, we have person attending college, and we have college graduate. That's pretty good.
We have the proper term is college dropout. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my bad. Okay, so here's the main question. When have you ever used anything you learned in school?
Every day.
Yeah, every day. I mean, basic English was very, very important. I gotta know how to speak, man.
I mean, Sure, but at the same time, you would have picked that up without going to school if you just continued to live in this society. I guess I'm talking more about what like students specifically mean, which is specific things that you will only learn in school. That when would you ever use any of that?
So I guess I have to ask about a caveat. Are you talking about core things that you learned through elementary through high school? Because in college, I've learned quite a bit of stuff that I found very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Feel free to answer up to interpretation. Did you feel like there is a significant difference? Like, do you feel like you didn't learn anything in public school that you are learning in college?
Yes, definitely. At my college, and it is only a community college, so don't jump out of your seats just yet. I've learned sociology has been some certain things. The way I've learned about the way people interact. There's been I can kind of pinpoint generally people's the way they express themselves and how to approach them, and that also ties in nicely with the communications classes I've done, and as well as some accounting.
I hate sociology and communications so much.
Okay. Well, I'm a communication major, so great.
So I hate you. That explains so much about why I hate you.
Yeah.
Bigotry!
So, yeah, the thing is, and when it comes to accounting, my accounting professor was very anarchic, where she didn't like just sitting there doing accounting problems. She wanted us to be in groups and stuff. And so I was able to do with like small group communication, accounting, and BA 205, which is business communication with technology. I've done a lot of group work, and I figured out how to do group work in a much more efficient way. And going into a workplace, you are going to work in groups a lot with a lot of characters and a lot of different personalities. And I feel like I have learned ways to approach that situation in ways that will help me and be successful, as well as just basic public speaking and fluent communication is something I did not learn whatsoever in high school or middle school or elementary school.
Okay. Ben, whatever you're doing, can you please like mute your mic until you're done?
Oh.
All
right.
Just getting a lot of background noise. Okay, and see, that's interesting, because I feel like I learned a lot in college. Like, honestly, I feel like I wasted my time in public school. I learned in college that so much of what I learned in public school was just not mistaken, just like fundamentally wrong. Like, not only just the things I learned, but the way I learned things. Like, I did not like math in school. Ever. I hated math when I was in school. Ben, I'm echoing now.
Oh, I don't understand how.
Do you have headphones in?
Yeah.
Weird. Okay, I think I'm good now. I hated math when I was in school, in public school. I could not stand anything about it. It pissed me the fuck off. I had vivid fantasies about killing my math teacher in high school. Like I was in trouble at one point, and I had to see a psychiatrist, and they asked me, have you ever thought about killing someone? And I'm like, yes. And they go, who? And I'm like, my math teacher. I hated that subject that much, and because of how he taught it. Then I took math courses in college, and like the first two I took were basically remedial to catch me back up with all the things I had forgotten since high school. And those were just okay. But then I took two more classes that were like required for my degree, and I had, I think, one of the greatest teachers ever. He taught math based on the theory of what you were trying to do, as opposed to just plug it in and figure it out. Was basically how it was taught in high school. That changed my whole perspective on math. I still don't particularly care for it, but I don't hate it now. So I don't know, like history, the way we learned history in high school compared to the way I learned it in college changed a lot. Like, I always liked history, but I just found out how much of like the stuff I learned in high school was like factually wrong, or propaganda. And
Now, that's strange. Maybe, okay. What do you mean by propaganda?
um, a lot of the stuff I learned about like how the country was formed, like we spent some time talking about the genocide of Native Americans and stuff in school. We didn't straight gloss over it, but we did not spend nearly as much time as I feel we should have. Like I remember being in classes and talking about kind of the ways in which this country was formed and imperialism, expansionism. Here's some heavy ass topics if you guys weren't ready for that. Imperialism, expansionism, and it wasn't that it was glossed over. That it's just it focused more on how these things ended more than how they existed. And I feel that when you do that, you completely miss the point of what made them horrible. And that's how you get people that treat it like it's not still this huge scar. That's how you get people that say things like, "Oh, they just need to get over it." Is because we gloss over a lot of the stuff to a certain degree and focus on how it was quote unquote solved, and we pretend that the problem doesn't exist anymore. So I feel like I feel like that's a big problem. Like I remember in certain classes being told like America's the greatest country on earth, and like that is just, you know, however you feel about that statement, however you feel about kids learning that, that's propaganda.
Yeah,
That's interesting because I did not learn that. I feel that I learned inadequate information, but not inadequate. I feel like I learned adequate information. And I did, but there is a lot of, we have to truncate history to get the curriculum over with. But I would not say that I feel like I had propaganda. Maybe it's just a difference in the schooling, the schooling techniques, teaching techniques. Maybe it's just our different, like, I don't know where you live, but I live in Oregon, and like I went to a high school.
You went to liberal high school. I went to conservative high school.
Oh lordy.
Oh, this is a can of worms I got my foot into.
Like,
Okay.
is that the high school? Is that the? Did you go to one of the high schools that didn't allow any gays to be talked about in school until like grade 10 or 11 or something like that? I remember something like that in Texas was being added in.
No, we didn't have anything like that. I mean, I'm Indiana. I'm not like deep south.
Well, that's good. But I guess just to butt in a little bit to the conversation, it's interesting you're saying that about the whole propaganda thing, Ian, because I actually had something similar with my history class as well, just not to the exact same degree, and it was a bit of a different subject where instead of like glossing over issues and acting like they didn't exist, my school would just skip certain parts of history entirely.
Oh.
Like,
and you're in Canada, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the example I'd give is that for 4 years of my middle school curriculum and my first year of high school, I went to a Christian private school, against my will, mind you, but I still went. And every single year, we always learned the exact same thing. We'd read the Bible up to Revelations, and then we'd skip to World War II.
Oh wow, that's interesting because I remember like several times going over American history and world history, which was just should have been called European history, but whatever. I always find it amusing that in world history class I never learned a thing about China, not one fucking thing.
Well, that's
besides
interesting because
they built a wall.
They built a wall. So the thing is, my little brother is 13 years old now. He's going to be going into 8th grade. And he, like, brought home a worksheet that said feudalism in ancient Japan. And I remember learning about that stuff. We learned about Eastern culture, mostly ancient, though. Mostly pre-modern, pre-20th century Asia, so to speak. We learned about like how Japan is different than China, how Japan formed. We learned about the Koreas and stuff. But we didn't really learn a whole lot of, and of course we studied Vietnam, but that's mostly tied into American history in the 1970s. But we didn't learn a lot about what's it called? Any Eastern cultures beyond what was ancient.
Mm-hmm. And that's just like, it's this idea of Eurocentrism, and that's, again, that is a form of propaganda. You have people say things like, what did any other nation do for the advancement of mankind besides European nations? And they include America in that. And it's like, well, you see, when you gloss over the history of other peoples, that's called propaganda. And so history is a big example of this. But, like, I to get back to the central question of the topic at hand, when will you ever use this? How much of what we teach in school is taught because of some arbitrary sense that we need to know this? Like, I love learning about history. I don't see any use in knowing how many wives Henry VIII had, which of them he beheaded, and which of them he divorced. I don't see why I need to know this. What like, am I going to be in a job interview and they're going to ask me how many wives did Henry VIII have?
That's exactly where that's going to come in handy.
If I ever am in the position where I'm interviewing someone for a job, that is going to be a question I ask now.
Honestly, the way it's felt to me, like looking back on high school and like what they taught, this might be, of course, like, a bit of a flawed thing to say, but honestly, it feels like with what they taught us in high school, at the very least, it feels like they're teaching you just to become more teachers with all the useless information that they're giving you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rasco, you've been kind of quiet. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I'm gonna step in here. So I didn't give my like beginning preamble thing about like my education. So I'm gonna go ahead and step in, do that right now, if you'll allow me to.
Go ahead.
So my high school experience is, I'm gonna assume, the most like drastically different from anybody else's like in this call, and it's probably very different from most people, because my college, I get the impression that a lot of high schools, because this is how it is in my area of where I was growing up at the time, this is how it was there. It was like terrible schools galore, schools where, like, unless you really wanted to get good grades and learn so that you had a good chance getting into a really good prestigious college or something, schools, like, unless you had that in mind, you could just get by doing very little and graduate. But the high school that I went to was the one high school in the area that was not like that, where it was literally like we are looking for like the best of the best students from middle school to come to our high school. And it's a school that people go to so that they can go to like Harvard. Like, there was like at least 5 people in my graduating class that went to Harvard, and some other people went to some other Ivy League schools. There's like a lot of people from my graduating class will go on to go to some of the most like crazy picky colleges in America.
I hope you befriended them and kissed their ass a lot, so you get favors
I don't need it. But so just a lot of really like I guess eager to be successful people will go to that high school. And so the high school itself, it's kind of got like a different tone. It's like a very hit the books hard, kids, do good. And we have like a reputation to uphold of getting like really good, test scores and all this stuff. And for the most part it's true, but because what makes the school like specifically unique, and like what I really liked about my high school, is that it wasn't a regular high school where you had just like your classes. It was like you were in a program at the high school. You were in a major. So like you would be in college, but that's like it's in high school. So you're either in the communications and journalism magnet, or you're in the youth performing arts magnet, or the visual arts magnet, or the math, science, and technology magnet, or the high school university magnet, which is where like if you didn't really want to have a major, you could be there and you could have like a diverse like palette of different classes over the years, and if you wanted to specify later you could, but you didn't have to. And so the magnet I was in, the visual arts magnet, coming out of there, because so much of what I did in school is focused on like just all types of art and all types of art classes, like I use that. Those are like literally why I felt confident enough to not want to go to college coming out of high school. It's literally from what I learned in high school based on like what I specialized in terms of just art. Like I took so many different classes. I took graphic design classes, sculpture, ceramics, textiles, design. Just, you know, I took so many drawing and painting courses, illustration, all of these printmaking, batik, all of these different classes I've taken. And I just feel like that has been incredibly valuable because, you know, like once you're educated in something, like you always take your education with you. So like I have all of those, I guess, trade skills out of high school. And to me, like that's like that's a big thing. Like it's a really valuable experience. At least my high school was. Not that all of it was, because there were parts of high school that were just like any other high school, and I really did BS a lot of classes, like a lot of my math classes, because I hate math as well. But I also had some really great AP courses that I took, where I had like some really great history teachers, and I've actually really lucked out with always having really good history teachers because they were like really specific, unique individuals that like really cared about education. But that's completely coincidence, and I could have wound up with very shitty teachers. It was coincidence. But when I got to high school, there was kind of like an expectation that the teachers produce students that can get certain test grades, and so there's a whole thing there. But whatever.
So Rasco, I guess jumping, like I had a similar but not quite to the extreme high school. So I went to the North Clackamas School District, was my school district, where the high schools were Milwaukee High School, Rex Putnam High School, and Clackamas High School. I went to Milwaukee High School. However, Milwaukee had a charter school inside of its high school called Milwaukee Academy of the Arts. And so I went to this place, and it was more project-oriented, and its curriculum was different. So by our senior year, we were learning college-level courses. And some of these college-level courses, you had to, we could like sign a waiver or something so that we could get college credit from the local community college, which is where I go now. So not quite to the extreme, but it is, I guess, sort of more a specified curriculum to get you more into college.
Honestly, Rasco, with the way that you were talking about like how all these people are, like, you know, they're getting prepared to go to college, and I'm not going to college. Up until you said like, oh, I got these really valuable courses, I thought you were gonna say, and I didn't go because I'm the rebel.
Well, I mean, I find that interesting. So Rasco's very much of the opinion that a lot of what he learned in school, he is trying to put to good use. And, you know, it's the very most typical student complaint, because I feel like I learned a lot in school that I've never felt the need to try to break out and use. Like, I learned different mathematical tricks that could, quote unquote, save you time on counting or something, you know, like stuff like figuring out how much can fit in this thing or whatever. But at the same time, I've never used those because the time it would take me to remember how to do that and do it and make sure that I'm right would probably be exponentially greater than the time it would take me to do it just, quote unquote, the long way. You know, add it by just basic addition.
Okay.
I mean,
stuff like that.
I have a
that's
question
why
for you then, Ian.
Go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say
Go ahead, Connor.
Okay. So being forced to go to school always sucks, right? You don't actually want to be there. Mm-hmm. So I guess, you know, when you go to college, half of the battle is, well, I want to be here, so you're more motivated to learn, or at least that is the case with most people. When it comes to high school and middle school and whatnot, you know, being told to learn math a certain way, how much of you learning it was a bad curriculum and just poor teaching, and how much of it was, I really don't want to be here, so I don't have much of a motivation to learn it? I guess, how much of learning do you think is on you versus how much is on the school?
It's a good question, because I feel like I could have been, like, I never liked math. I've never liked math, but I did not hate it until high school with the teacher I had. Like, I was never particularly good at math in elementary school or middle school, but I didn't vehemently hate it until high school.
Okay.
So I think the way it's taught, the way you teach kids things, the way you learn is a big impact on how much you want to be attentive to the subject. Because, like I said, I don't think I was taught history very well. For those that don't know, I've talked about this ad nauseum, but for those that don't know, here is how history is done versus how it is taught. Connor, you were preparing for a test. Columbus discovered America in 1492. Connor, when did Columbus discover America?
1492.
Okay. Here's how history...
Be like Columbus, Connor. He had to take tests.
Yeah, here's how history is done. Alright, so we have this document signed by the Queen of Spain in 1492 chartering Christopher Columbus to take some boats and find a new path to India and the East by going west. We'll see how well this works. Columbus, on his journey, stumbled onto a piece of land, and till his death, by all accounts and documents, proclaimed that this land was India. So, even by his own admission, Columbus did not discover America. There's like so much more detail to what is going on behind that statement than any kind of thing. Like, you have history that is taught as basic A and B questions and answers. But the process of history is to look at first-hand accounts backed up by documentation, which is why history is a bitch to prove. Connor, what'd you have for lunch the last time you went out to a restaurant?
Ooh, I want to get some nachos at a Mexican joint.
Do you have a receipt?
Yes, I do.
On your person right now?
Yes, I do.
You better file that receipt away, because 100 years from now we will never be able to prove what you've claimed in this conversation, that you went to go get some nachos at a Mexican restaurant, unless we have the documented proof of that receipt. So that is how hard history is to prove.
And Barack Obama's birth certificate.
And Barack Obama's birth certificate. That is how hard history is to prove. You need documentation backing up first-hand accounts. Like, it was funny, I was talking to Rasco about this. So there was this Cartoon Network series, that very short-lived, with Johnny Bravo, called JBVO, where it was Johnny Bravo interacting with actual children via phone calls and voice messages, taking requests to play cartoon shows. And he could only play shorts, he couldn't play full blocks because it was a half-hour show. So one kid didn't understand this and called in and requested an episode of Dragon Ball Z, and Johnny couldn't do it, but instead he played like a good half of an episode of Dragon Ball Z, fast-forwarding through it and just voicing over, describing what was going on. And they're like, it's funny, you could look into this. There are a ton of people on the internet who all have this specific memory of Johnny Bravo voicing over an episode of Dragon Ball Z, but they all kind of contradict each other to one extent or another. Like, some people say it was Frieza in the episode, some people say it was Cell, some people can't agree on, like, what he was talking about. But, like, everyone seems to remember this. But the video doesn't exist anymore, so you can't prove that it happened.
So kind of like a Mandela effect, too, because no one has, like, the right specific memory with what exactly it was.
Yeah,
The Bravo effect.
There's contradictory accounts of what it is, so there's no historical proof that it actually happened.
I'm sure it's out there somewhere if you look hard enough.
Maybe, but, like, it's yet to be found. It's so niche that it's yet to be rediscovered. So you need to, like, hope that someone videotaped it when it originally aired, since they didn't do reruns of that particular block, and then that they just one day decide to upload that.
Going back to what you said, or what you were saying earlier with math and everything, though, with the
way in which it's taught,
different techniques that all you're learning, and how, you know, the quote unquote long way is faster. I guess that's why I'm, like I said, starting to think about that whole thing about how they're trying to teach you how to be better. Like, high school now is seeming to be, this is where we teach you how to be good teachers, or at least know what you need to know just to get the basics of teaching, because a lot of this shit is like, you can get by a lot of stuff these days with, like, elementary to middle school curriculum. It's like, you know, especially since considering about probably 50% of the population can't fucking spell properly.
Facts.
And-
These are real statistics, people.
And it's interesting to me that they're doing that, because I remember talking to some of my high school teachers, like when it came to like math or like English, when they taught like Shakespeare and shit, and they even said like, yeah, this is just what I'm being forced to do this. You really don't need this in the real world. So really, like, the only kind of goal you're going to get where the high school information will be useful is if you decide, oh, I'm going to teach this or teach that later in life, instead of, you know, doing something that isn't soul crushing.
Yeah, and like I know, you know, occasionally I've been asked to like do inventories at work, and we have a bunch of boxes up on a high shelf, and they're organized at like, you know, 7 by 10, or not even that, 7 by like 6. So yeah, I could just do the multiplication, and it's not actually 7 by 6, it's weirder numbers than that. So like I don't have that particular multiplication memorized. I could just do the multiplication and get the answer for that, but you know what? By the time I do that and check it in my head to make sure I'm right, I could probably just count them. Like, it's just, yeah, there's probably a quote-unquote easier way to do this if you have the confidence to do it in that easier way. But, like, what if you screw it up and you're wrong?
Well, I mean, multiplying is really only good for, like, really, like, if you have, like, a lot of, like, if it's inventory, for example. Like, let's say you have, like, maybe 200 to 300 boxes in there.
Yeah, and it's not that high, but it's at the same time where it's like, you know, they're at odd. It's like two odd numbers that like you don't immediately know the corresponding numbers to.
Yeah.
And I remember I counted it and I was like, okay, so it's like 80 something, and then I tried to do the math with multiplication and I got there eventually, but it's like I don't have that multiplication tab memorized. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't feel confident giving that answer and probably end up counting it out anyway. And, like, maybe that's a failing with me not applying myself enough to remember these things and yada yada, but, like, at the same time, if you're not confident, you're not confident. And you don't want to take that back to a boss where, like, are you sure these numbers are right? Maybe. Give it a good, like, 82%. On a I'm sure scale. Like, that's not the kind of answer you want to take back to a boss or whatever. That's a bad answer. But at the same time, I guess the flip side of this is, again, I'm a philosophy major. I learned philosophy in college, and that's kind of the when you tell people that, they kind of all go, "Oh, when are you ever going to use that in real life?" I'm like, there's nothing wrong with knowing things for the sake of knowing things. Why is that not okay with people? Why is everything you have to know be some kind of way to get you money? I'm torn on this. I guess maybe I'm sounding like a hypocrite. I don't know.
Well, no, like, that's the thing, is that a lot of people always think, like, oh, the best thing to do for college is to go to a school and get a class that you know, where you can get something where you know you're going to get yourself a job. But the thing is, the way the economy is now, no degree is going to guarantee you a job anywhere anymore. So you might as well go for what you love. At least it's the case over here in Canada anyway. It might be different in the States.
The other option is, like, you don't have to go to college. Like, but the thing is, like, I don't think that you should go to college if you can't financially, like, if it's a matter of I could go to college and major in this, but I will never be able to pay for it. Well, I think that you probably shouldn't do that.
I agree.
That's why.
I think college should just be free, and then you shouldn't get to go. Like, I think college should be free, but academic probation should be more strict.
If you're in New Brunswick, it actually is free if you're low-income housing.
Yeah, I think it should be free across the board. I have no problem paying for billionaires to go to college, as long as they are also paying for it, and and also, again, I want academic accountability. What? Yeah, academic probation. Thank you. Forgot the word. Like one of my professors, he went to a school, and I think it was Denmark. And he talked about like how intimidating his school was because they'd start every semester off by calling everyone into like the grand hall, because this was an old ass school and it had existed for like centuries. They called everyone into the grand hall, and then they took out the rolls of student names, and they go, the following students have been not expelled, have been dropped because of poor performance. And then they would publicly read your name out if you didn't meet the standards that they needed.
Oh
and then
my
the
God.
next roll would be, the following students are on academic probation, and if their grades do not improve, they will be dropped. And then the third roll was like, the following students are still enrolled. And then the final roll would be, the following students are on the honor roll. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. That's intimidating as hell. Like, I have no problem for college to be free for literally everyone if we actually keep it where you have to be working your ass off to be in college. I think that is perfectly fair. And, like, at the same time, I also think, but you can always re-enroll. Like, maybe after, like, a period you can re-enroll, but I think you should always be able to re-enroll. I think a problem with the way we treat college, and in this day and age, is we treat it as just the next step. It's just the thing you do after high school. You go to college. There's very few people like Rasco that choose not to go. It's become an expectation, which is ridiculous.
I mean, with what you're saying before, though, with like, let's say if, for example, exactly what you're saying would happen, and we got like free tuition with those harder, laws to like say, oh, this person stinks, they don't make our standards and all that sort of thing. Wouldn't that cause colleges that are a bit more, I guess you could say, less useful in the real world to kind of like dwindle out, and like less people would be going to them? Like film school or something like that.
Not necessarily, because grades are grades.
And a lot of film schools wouldn't be free. Like, a lot of film schools are technically trade schools. Mm-hmm. So, like, it wouldn't even operate within that realm.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's something worth scratching your head about, but I just think generally
I guess this is the big thing of, the government wouldn't want to pay for people to go shoot with a bunch of cameras. Is, like, the mentality.
National Endowment for the Arts, which is being cut, but whatever. I think there is a vested interest in people learning art, whether or not we like to think of it that way. But yeah, I am of two minds on this, because again, I don't feel like I need to know... I cannot tell you the last time I used the Pythagorean theorem outside of a high school, or outside of a classroom. And the reason why is because I've never used the Pythagorean theorem outside of a classroom.
Well, actually, I've actually used the Pythagorean theorem outside of the classroom.
Were you doing it to get laid at least?
Nope, it was actually on the job.
Good job.
I was doing a Daffy Duck impression. I was like, the Pythagorean theorem. So, no, what we are doing is, so basically, I don't work at a theater anymore. I'm basically a glorified janitor. And
moving up.
What's that?
I said moving up.
No, actually, as far as payment goes, yeah, I am moving up. So,
I know. I'm being literal.
I have to like set up. So I have to set up rooms, and certain rooms are certain sizes, and you have to put in tables and chairs and whatnot. And it's become helpful in terms of like knowing multiplication tables and whatnot, and how you want to set things up to make it to get the most people in a specific size room. So
Yeah, I
I've actually
gotcha.
found education to be very helpful. And in terms of the way I dance around paperwork, my business classes like HR management, BA 205, business law, it's all been actually extremely helpful in understanding the business side of working contracts and stuff.
I mean, that's interesting and stuff. And, like, yeah, I agree that I was using Pythagorean theorem as kind of an example. Let's go with the quadratic formula. You ever use the quadratic formula outside of a classroom?
Nope.
I wasn't
Okay,
even
there
taught
we
that.
go. It's like it looks intimidating as fuck.
It is.
I actually got really good with the
college algebra.
yeah. I actually got really good at the quadratic formula because I just learned to memorize it, which is a terrible idea. But anyway, quadratic formula I've never used outside of the classroom. But at the same time, I like Pythagorean better because I can do this. So Pythagorean theorem I've never used outside of a classroom. But you know what I can tell you from what I learned in college? Pythagoras thought that everything could be boiled down to absolute theorems and perfectly understandable equilibrium. Pythagoras had a fucking cult around the idea that everything could be mathematically expressed in perfect logical order. And it was bizarre. Nothing was abstract, nothing was subjective. Everything was quantifiable to Pythagoras. And that's like, what use is that fucking information but to tell you the Pythagorean theorem is kind of weird because it's like this ultimate doctrine?
Well, I mean, again, like Rasco said, it could possibly help you get laid.
I mean, right?
Just go up
It's
to
just-
a bar and it's like, hey, did you know Pythagoras thought everything could be boiled down to a formula?
Yeah,
Oh, you
pretty
didn't?
much.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you didn't? Well, how about everything get boiled down to my dick? Let's get to my room now.
Yeah, pretty much. No, so like, I mean, that is useless, quote unquote, information. I love telling stories about philosophy and the history of philosophers. I can sit here all day and talk about Diogenes, but like, I don't know if that has a quote unquote use outside of just knowledge having value. But at the same time, I don't feel that all knowledge has equal value. As far, I think it is subjective to how you lead your life. If to you, living in a successful career, making money, is the most important thing, you're certainly not alone in that. Then Henry VIII having X number of wives and beheading so many of them, probably not that useful as far as you're concerned.
Well, I mean, it's really just terrible with like I said, again, going with just high school exclusively because that's all I really know. But, I can come out of high school and tell you the basic premise and main plot beats of Hamlet, but I can't tell you how to do my fucking taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like I think that's the worst thing about high school at the very least is that not only are they teaching us information that isn't useful, there's information that is useful that we should be learning in the first place.
Yeah, I live in Oregon. We don't pump our own gas. When I first had to go out on a road trip outside of Oregon, it was really scary. I had to learn how to pump my own gas without having to ask anybody.
What
Wow.
the
You
fucking
are-
serious? You little sheltered snowflake.
Get out of here. That's a cuck state right there, am I right?
That is such a cuck move right there. Like, I don't even know how I would react to that. Like, if I pulled up to a gas station in Oregon and, like, some dude just, like, started running around my car and shit, I'd be ready to fight someone.
Yeah, how
You're
does
like,
it
"Get the fuck
work?
away
Is there
from
like
my
a guy
car."
standing at the pump, like at the ready?
Yeah, so you roll up, you roll down your window, turn off your car, a person says, all right, what do you want? And you say, fill her up with regular. And
Are
they
you
do it.
kidding me? This
And
is
then when-
like heaven. What the hell?
Did you, like, time travel to the 50s?
And then when you're
Is
all
Oregon,
done,
like, has Oregon, like, not advanced out of the 50s? Is that
well,
what's
we
going
also
on?
don't have sales tax, which is pretty awesome. So when I have to go
What?
to the mall or something, it's all at the value. Now our property taxes is ridiculous, so we kind of make up for it there.
Meh.
I'm moving to Oregon.
Anyway. Yeah, fuck it. Moving to Oregon. Have people pump my gas for me. You fucking 1%ers.
That sounded dirty.
Yeah. Well, like, I don't know. It's that weird thing of like, you do knowledge has value, but like, how much value does it have to you as a person in your day-to-day life is an important and intriguing question. I like to think that if everyone learned just a little bit of philosophy, that the world would be a better place, no matter what philosophy you learned. That includes Hegel. But at the same time, if someone doesn't have any interest and is kind of set in their ways, then it's not going to help them no matter what they read. So, I don't know. I guess I can't say that it's like definitely better for you to know this.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest question that would be raised, and like I think would be most interesting to kind of discuss when thinking about that sort of thing, is what classes do you think, what classes and subjects do you think should be mandatory to replace the ones that we are kind of like, yeah, that's really pointless. Like, we don't need that. Because, there's a couple like that.
I feel like the way... go ahead, Connor. Go ahead.
Well, I think one of them could be, I don't know, you're required to take a car class where you need to learn how to change your oil and change your tire.
And pump your own goddamn gas.
Yes. I think we can all learn from this, all right? That's what I'm saying. So, because, I mean,
Connor, how do you...
most of us are going to be operating a car at some point in our life. And changing your tire or your wheel is important if you get a flat tire and you need to get a new one. That's actually important. Changing your oil, there's not always going to be a Jiffy Lube around the corner. You kind of, and oil is really cheap. It's like $5 for a quart. So I think that stuff's actually kind of important because when I didn't get my license till my senior year of high school, and I was kind of having to learn a lot of that stuff. After a little while after having a car, I kind of wish I had learned that in a way that, not everyone's going to have a dad that is kind of into cars and knows how to do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another one would definitely be like filing your taxes or how to make a resume.
I did learn how to do taxes when I was in elementary school. I'm not even joking. I learned how to do taxes when I was in elementary school.
I think that would be useful. I think, as much as I hate the thing, and I think it would almost qualify as indoctrination at this point, I feel like we should teach people about the stock market. I think it's weird that I took an economics class in high school, and all I learned about the stock market in it was, we learned vague economic theories, but all I learned specifically about the current existing stock market was, hey, CDs are a bit better than volatile stocks. I was like, what's a CD? And I never got an answer, and I still don't know.
What's funny? I learned quite a bit about the stock market when I was in BA 101. And right after I finished that course is when The Wolf of Wall Street came out. And he's talking about how he manipulates the stock market with his penny stocks. And I'm like, oh, that's actually really interesting. And then he stops and he goes, wait, you don't care about this. You want to see more hookers. I'm like, wait, no, that's actually kind of interesting. That's my stock market story.
How about you, Rasko? What classes should we teach?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not a matter of, what should we teach? Maybe it's a matter of, how should we be able to decide what class, or should we have more choice in what we learn?
Who are we to decide what we teach?
because that was the thing that I really took away from my high school experience was that if more high schools were like this, I think people would have more really valuable skills immediately out of high school. If more high schools allowed you to specialize, because by the time I was a senior in high school, I had entire days of all art classes, like 4 classes in one day, 6 hours, all art classes in one day. That's pretty crazy. I don't know anybody else that's gone to a high school where that's been the case for them. That's if more people had the option to do that, or do that but with math, or do that but with journalism, or whatever you want. That would, I think that it's kind of a matter of we need to have the ability for kids to specialize when they're in high school.
I like that idea. I like the, it's when people say school choice, that's kind of what they want you to think they're talking about. And I do like the idea. I do still feel like some things should be required, like
I was going to ask
grammar.
I do as well.
Grammar and literature, I feel, should be required because, like, I told this story to Russ. I'm not sure if I told this story on recording or not, but I work with this guy and he's like 20, and I remember being 20. I still don't feel like I'm not 20, but whatever. He's like 20, and I'm sitting there talking to someone about the Planet of the Apes movies, and I said, no matter how good any of them are, nothing is as good as the original. And this 20-year-old kid looks at me and he goes, really? The Tim Burton movie? You think that's so good? I'm like,
Ooh.
No, the original. He's like, yeah, the Tim Burton one. That came out in like the early 2000s. That's the original. I'm like, I don't understand what world he lives in where he doesn't know about the 60s Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah, we
I
talked
don't
about this
understand
with a bunch of different things. I remember that.
Yeah, I don't understand that reality. Like, how do you live in this culture? Because it gets referenced constantly. So I feel like certain things that are just cultural icons you need to know. I feel you need to know
A whole
who
class
Shakespeare
just on Planet
was.
of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, sure. I feel you need to know who Shakespeare was. I feel you need to know what plays he wrote. Because if you don't, you get stupid-ass songs like Taylor Swift's Romeo and Juliet, in which she clearly has not read Romeo and Juliet.
It's
I
called
just-
Love Story, actually.
What the fuck ever her song is called, it's shit.
I agree.
You know
now.
what? Like, we need... come to think of it, we need classes that really stress to people that are going to be born into a world where, like, iPhones, iPads, they're everywhere. Everyone has some sort of, like, weird touchscreen electronic device. Like, when we've become so integrated with where we've integrated technology into our daily lives to such a level, like, we need to have classes that teach kids what a paradigm shift, like, the internet was and how, like, rapidly technology advanced, and like that, like, it's specifically about like life pre all of these crazy technologies that we now have and enjoy.
History
Like
of the modern age.
like,
I mean, no, go ahead.
but like it can't just it needs to be like either like really stressed in history or like an entire field in its own, like just talking about like the post-internet human. Like, what does that mean? Like, as we go on to this voyage into this never-ending trek of creating new technology and it becoming more dependent on it every single day. That's going to be crazy because there will be kids the same way that there are kids who have been born into a world where Star Wars has always existed. They don't know a world without Star Wars. There are going to be kids who are born into a world with iPads who don't know a world without iPads, and that's weird. Who don't know anything about what it was like before the internet was as widely available as it is today. That's crazy.
And that's actually interesting. Do you think that's a matter of updating history curriculum? Because I was born in 1995. I don't remember when Bill Clinton was the president of the United States. I remember George W. Bush being president of the United States, but I don't remember when he started. I remember his second election. I remember John Kerry and all that business.
Me too.
But at the same time, I was so young, I didn't really understand what all was happening. I remember 9/11 happened when I was 6. So there was that moment of, it almost didn't seem real. It just sort of seemed like, oh, something bad happened. Well, bad things always happen. I didn't understand just how important of a thing 9/11 was, and I didn't understand, just how stupidly we reacted to it. I didn't understand what was really going on with Iraq and Saddam Hussein. I didn't even know what Operation Desert Storm was. So when we go in and we do history classes, we kind of learn up till about the 80s-ish, and somewhere in there we stop. We don't learn about the 90s. I didn't learn anything about Bill Clinton. I still, to this day, don't really know a lot about the Clinton administration. I know Monica Lewinsky, all right, but I don't really know a lot about the policies and what happened. I don't know a lot about George W. Bush, and I don't really know all the ins and outs of the Patriot Act and maybe what was happening on Capitol Hill with all that stuff. And when you talk about a paradigm shift with the internet going on, Rasco, that's really interesting because that would also fall under that same era of Bush and Obama and stuff. So I think that an updated curriculum is really direly needed right now.
Well, not only an updated curriculum, going what you're saying with like an updated history curriculum, I'm of the opinion that depending on like the quality of the teaching, obviously that there should still be certain historical events that should be taught, but just with the kind of mentality of, you know, history, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. So, you know, teach people at a young age about stories, you know, that happened long ago where like, oh, this racism thing happened and that was a very bad thing. Like it caused this very bad thing to happen. Or, oh, when they did this thing, when this person cheated, they...
Let's not forget about the Armenian genocide.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's maybe teach the Armenian genocide. That'd be good.
No, I guess like the point is that like there should be things that should be taught in like history classes that maybe not for like maybe again this is much as my opinion, that maybe not for like, oh, I know this happened, but more like, oh, I learned this lesson that what caused this event to happen was a very bad thing, and now I know if I do that, it's not really going to cause any good things to happen. It's only going to cause bad, like racism.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where like the way we teach subjects matters, but I feel like that's the problem with the way things are taught. Is things are taught to the test. Like I was talking about with Connor earlier. Connor, when did Columbus discover America?
1492.
Yeah, but like you don't understand the nuance or the. It's not like he set out. You understand so little about the context of that just based on that. I mean, you get an A+ on that test, but you don't understand the event, right? I feel like we take so much and boil it down and try to, you know, just streamline things so much. And it's this mentality of teach to the test, teach to the ABCD multiple choice answer. Don't worry about the context. The student raises their hand and has a question. We ain't got time for that. We need to keep moving. And that's wrong. You're depriving people of an education at that point. You're not teaching them anything. You're giving them information.
Wrong.
Well, I mean, that's the problem of, like, this whole thing where, like, everything is taught only one specific way at most public schools, but a lot of people learn in very different ways. So, like, not giving them, like, the information they need and the way they need it is, like, that's a big problem. I mean, I hated going to private school, you know, from, like, my middle school years, but I'm being honest, aside from, you know, history, because we just learned about a fancy book that is completely false, you know, when I learned stuff, like when I learned math, when I learned what they called science, I learned it much better because there was
Wait, did you learn creationism?
Yes. And we did learn about evolution.
Man.
But they
I just want to sit here and talk to you for like the next 6 hours about creationism.
But no, I don't believe in creationism. Don't worry about that. But
no, I'm not saying you do. I just want to talk to you about it.
But like that was the thing of, at the very least, we had a very limited classroom, but only about 12 people in it, and everyone was like getting the attention they needed to learn the way they should. Like you know, if someone had a question, they'd answer it, and like that's kind of the thing. We need smaller classrooms, and we need more one-to-one ways of teaching. Honestly, in a perfect world, everyone would have everyone would be
personal tutor.
Yeah, personal tutor would go to everyone would get an assigned personal tutor. That would be what would be a perfect education system, because then you could always make sure that you'd hate it, but you'd learn what the fuck you're supposed to learn.
I hate that.
Okay,
So-
Rasco, elaborate.
No.
I just there's so many classes that I wouldn't be able to get away with not giving a shit if I had to go one-on-one. Dude, I was a professional getting by in math class person in high school. I was so good at that. And I learned very little. I just couldn't do that.
Yeah, so Rasco, you don't like that idea for all the wrong reasons.
What are you talking about? These are altruistic reasons that will lead to a better future.
Well, no, I mean, you don't feel like you would have learned math better, or maybe enjoyed math if you had more of a one-on-one approach that was like more specifically designed to your sensibilities?
No, because I don't think it was necessary. Like, because at this point, I learned, because all through elementary school, when I was in the third grade is when they separated the people who, like, they separated kids that were, like, advanced at math from kids who weren't. So it was pretty much, there wasn't, like, so pretty much from fourth grade on, so fourth and fifth, because we're talking about elementary school, if you, in third grade, when you took this one test, placed in this certain thing, you were in the advanced math class. So that was, like, whatever. And I was in that class, and I didn't ever really like math. But when I got to middle school, I really started to hate math, but I was still in an advanced math class and all through middle school. And then at high school is where I started, like, purposefully choosing the easier math classes because I was like, I hate fucking math. Fuck math! And so it wasn't like I was, like, really bad at math. In fact, I learned most of, like, the really necessary everyday kind of math, which is all that stuff that you typically learn in those early elementary school and middle school for sure years. By the time you're in middle school, 8th grade, you're already learning bullshit math that you don't need. And so it's like, I just feel like at that point, like, we don't need to have people that are 16 years old being forced by the state to sit down in a room with somebody and learn this like, specifics of this one field when they may have a proclivity to success in some other field.
Well, I mean, that's why they need to do the whole, like, what we've been saying, like, honestly, curriculum should just be like college, but just for the whole fucking thing, once you're, like, old enough to know what it is you want to know, or they think you might want to know. Like, by the time you're in high school or even late middle school, you choose what you want, you get one teacher in the classroom with you, and then they fucking teach you what you want to learn. And then, like, get rid of, like, the bullshit math. It would really make things, like, it might not work for everybody. It wouldn't be a perfect system having one-on-one, obviously, because nothing is perfect with that kind of system. But I could tell you that there would be a lot more, like, people would actually, maybe they wouldn't still enjoy what they're doing, but there would be a lot of people who, like, okay, I actually know what the fuck I'm doing in this. And it might even help with people who would get a bit of a confidence boost, like, hey, I actually know this. Maybe I can actually use this in the real world, depending on the subject, of course.
Well, to jump off your point, I mean, we're offering here a lot of criticisms regarding the education system, and it ain't pretty.
American and Canadian.
Yeah, but I'd say that it's not the worst, right? I mean,
yeah,
there are worse education systems out there, I'm sure. And I do think, though, that, maybe cutting at least 1 billion of the military's funding and maybe giving it to maybe education would be a good idea, personally. And I don't know, I think that more money in an education system would cause a higher payment for teachers, which would cause more a higher demand of higher demand from teachers to want to teach. I don't know. I think that we can improve this by increasing funding and stuff and paying more attention. And as a result, people will pay more attention to the education system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I honestly, to go into, like, government stuff for a very brief second. I mean, but I remember reading that Donald Trump was going to be cutting even more funding to education. Again, not sure if that's completely true with the fake news going
fake
around.
News.
But honestly, that seems so backwards to me. Of why, like, focusing on the here and now is important, yes, but really there should be more focus on
the future.
On the future, because you could be doing really good here and now with the adults who learned from before, but if you make it so that our future, our kids, are learning shit, then it's just going to go back downhill again.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing I worry about, is a culture of ignorance. And again, this is why I like...
Idiocracy. It's going to come true.
Idiocracy. Anyway.
But you don't like that movie?
I have complicated feelings about Idiocracy I don't want to get into right now.
Okay, fair enough.
I say stuff like, when are you going to ever use this? This is useless information. But at the same time, it's information. And I kind of make fun of the statement because it's something I know I said when I was in school. When am I ever going to use this? And I'm like, yeah, it is kind of silly that I got to learn the quadratic formula. That's kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, I think that an educated populace is just inarguably a good thing. And I feel that an ignorant populace is inherently dangerous. Because when you have a world in which people will believe anything, they will believe anything. And I think that you become a ignorant person by believing anything, and by believing that knowledge has no value, even in just it being knowledge. So, I guess I'm on this kind of double think thing, where I'm like, on some level, yeah, this information's pretty fucking useless. There's no way to get around it. I don't care that Henry VIII had 6 wives. I bet that question was just kicking everyone in the ass right throughout this whole video. I don't give a fuck that Henry VIII had 6 wives. It is not important. But it is information. It is something that I know. It is something that people know. And I don't want that information to be lost, because on some level it is part of a greater collective that hopefully educates and enhances the intelligence of the populace as a whole.
But I guess it's still a thing that, again, there are still a lot of things that I guess you might not consider full-on intelligence because it's not related to science or math or anything. Like, basic things that we should know, like Connor was saying, like, with changing your tires and or oil in your car.
Or counting back change. Can we do that?
Yeah, counting back change, learning your,
Or here's an idea, Connor. Be a modern individual, live in the 21st century, and just use a goddamn card.
But it's still a thing that, it's not that the information is completely useless, but I think now we're at an age, like, with the internet and everything, where there's a lot of things that can be learned. Like, let's say in this hypothetical world, in school you're taught, like, instead of English, well, maybe not like English, like, instead of, like, being taught about Henry VIII having 6 wives, you learn about, today we're going to learn how to do a resume, kind of a thing. And then, if I want to know what's known as the more quote-unquote useless information, I can look it up because the fucking internet exists. And it's easy at our fingertips. We can just come at it at any time.
Yeah, and, there's some problems with that, but I see where you're getting at.
It's still a thing of... I agree with you that we shouldn't have a words escaping me.
Culture of ignorance?
Yeah, culture of ignorance, thank you. But it should still be a thing of... what we're learning is knowledge in itself, yes, but if we're learning knowledge, it should still be things that we actually need to learn in order to function.
And
in the real world.
There's an element, though, of people going to school that are just there because they have to, and they're being willfully ignorant. They don't want to learn information, and that's also a problem that teachers, as hard as they may try, you can't convince a lot of students who just don't want to be there to be there.
Yeah, and I like that what Rasko was talking about, I think, is a good way to not solve that problem, but certainly put a big-ass dent in it, is having a choice thing. Like, Rasko, did you wake up some days, and even, in semesters where you had a math class or whatever, you were still like, man, I cannot wait to go to school to continue working on this one thing in this class?
Oh, definitely. There were some very cool days at school when I was in high school.
Yeah, and, I had maybe 1 or 2 of those related to different courses that I was in, but not nearly as many as I imagine Rasko may have had with the kind of program he described. I do think that giving students some level of choice, I definitely had that in days when I was in college. I had oh man, I am so excited to get to this art history class. I'm so excited for this philosophy lecture today. I really want it. I read this fucking argument, and I want to just get into it because this is fucking with my mind right now.
I loved accounting because there were so many hot chicks in that class. It was great.
I don't think that you really got the point of what this conversation was about, Connor.
It's actually really funny you mentioned that whole thing, Ian. A friend of mine had an experience like that where there's this one course that he would want to keep coming back to where I think during like grade 11 or 12 he had a French class, and they just had to like, okay, take a topic and then teach us how to do that topic in French. And so he decided, I'm going to teach them how to beat the Elite Four in French. And so he spent his study periods playing Pokemon Fire Red on his emulators.
That's epic.
That's pretty good. But yeah, just like I think giving students a active role, because I agree, I do think that is an important side of things, but I do feel like there still needs to be required courses that not everyone's going to want to learn.
Well,
again,
the way
I think to be a functioning member of this society with any level of cultural awareness, you have to know who Shakespeare is, and you have to have read or at least seen one of his plays. I don't think that is too much to ask from every member of the populace.
With how you're talking, it sounds like it's going to be like a 12-hour or even like 24-hour fucking day at school. Like, no one sleeps, no one goes home. You're just learn. Nothing changes.
I don't know. I don't think that. But like, I don't like Shakespeare, but I feel that you need to know who Shakespeare is. I'm an atheist. I feel everyone should know, like, that it lives in Western cultures, should know stories from the Bible. Not for the moral lessons. I have huge problems with the morals. But because they are huge cultural parts of what defines us. You have "In God We Trust" written on the back of your money. There's a reason. You should know it.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these like religious things put in your society. You should understand that religion, whether or not you agree with it. And I think you should understand more about other world religions too. But I'm willing to put Christianity above those in at least Western education, because the history of Christianity is the history of the West. Take that for what it's worth. Has anyone got anything else, or are we good to end?
I don't have anything else to say.
We kind of went around in circles a lot, but I don't have anything else to say myself.
Connor's good? Okay.
Do you hear me saying anything? Thought so.
Oh.
Okay, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Rasco, we need a review topic, sir.
For next week, let's go with Green Room.
Green Room, okay.
Oh, I've won an excuse to see that movie.
You're more than welcome to join us, man.
Okay, I'll convince the girlfriend to watch it with me.
Okay. Good luck with that.
Good luck.
That will be one nice relationship to look back on and remember fondly.
Well, I mean, our very first freaking date or movie date was watching Hacksaw Ridge, so
lovely. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the beta male cuck.
I'm the Santa.
And I'm the other guy.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.